Kaliningrad is a region that has become the epicenter of not only an energy war, but also a geopolitical war. Russia against the European Union, gas projects against sanctions, security against secession. This conflict shows how far both sides are willing to go to assert their influence. But who is really winning this fight? And what are ordinary people risking? Let's figure it out. Greetings, dear friends. The game continues to gain momentum, becoming more and more exciting. Who will be more cunning? Who will take the decisive step and checkmate? This time, Lithuania is in the spotlight, which seems to have decided to take on the role of a small but very aggressive dog barking at Gazprom. It tightens the conditions of gas transit, and Gazprom, in turn, is ready to respond with something much more serious than just shutting off gas. The Nord Stream 2 project, which has long symbolized controversy, is now turning into a real time bomb. The question is who will be the first to decide to cut this cord and undermine the mechanism. This is not only about gas supplies to Kaliningrad, but also about the global consequences for the whole of Europe. The Kaliningrad region, being surrounded by EU countries, is completely dependent on gas supplies through Lithuania. And so Lithuania, as the second plan in the blockbuster, decides to use this dependence as a lever of pressure. Gazprom's response is not long in coming. Bigger trump cards are being pulled out of the sleeve. It will not just be a clash, but a real fight in which the stakes will rise to the limit. It will be interesting. Friends, let's not delay. Let's get started. It seems that what is happening resembles the scenario for the new season of Game of Thrones, where the center of events is not dragons, but gas pipelines. There are also kings here, energy corporations and countries fighting for power and control over gas supplies to Europe. Intrigues, the struggle for dominance, unexpected moves. All this fills the atmosphere, and the stakes are rising like gasoline prices. How will this episode end? A win for one side or a draw? To understand this, it is worth looking a little into the past. Kaliningrad region has always been a strategically important region for Russia. Its geographical location makes it vulnerable, but also a valuable asset that can be used for pressure. Lithuania has long considered gas transit as a tool to demonstrate its strength. Their message is clear. Do you want gas? First, prove that you deserve it. Tough measures, but such are the realities. Since 2000, Lithuania has been increasingly controlling gas transit, officially motivating this by protecting the market. However, everyone understands that this is a game of nerves. Kaliningrad has turned out to be a pawn on a chessboard manipulated by larger players, Russia and the EU, each of which seeks to use the region as a lever of pressure, making it hostage to its own strategic interests. Residents of the Kaliningrad region are already wondering if it will be warm in their homes tomorrow, or if Lithuania will find another reason to turn off the valve. There is tension in the air, as if the situation is slipping into a political trap. Russia, of course, did not stand aside. Gazprom resurrected a project that had been postponed at the very beginning, connecting Kaliningrad to Nord Stream 2. This project was discussed several years ago, but then it was frozen for political and economic reasons. Now, his finest hour has arrived. The 200-kilometer branch project may become a solution for the gas supply of the region, and at the same time strengthen Russia's position in this gas game. Lithuania probably did not expect that its attempts to pin Gazprom to the wall would lead to such a massive response. If she thought she could easily manipulate the situation, she clearly underestimated the power of the counter-move. Gazprom responds as if it's about the final of the World Chess Championship. This conflict has long gone beyond the issue of pipes and gas. It's about influence, about power, about who will dictate the terms. Europe finds itself in the middle of a new gas war, where each side strives not only to win, but also to show who is in charge. And, let's be honest, in this game, the rules are written by the one with the most gas. However, there is another side to the coin. Europe is facing rising energy prices, while Russia is feeling additional pressure. But it seems that she is determined to stand until the last cubic meter of gas. Lithuania, by actively waving the flag of intransigence, runs the risk of being cast as the character who screamed loudly and then got bounced back like a boomerang. This conflict will probably not end in triumph for one of the parties, but will develop into a common headache for all, into a crisis due to rising energy prices, which will increase pressure on the economy. Russia risks losing the trust of its partners, which will affect long-term contracts, and Lithuania, trying to maneuver between major players, may be left with its nose, not achieving its goals and creating internal instability. After all, sometimes chess ends not with a foul but with a draw or, as they say in the energy world, turning off all the light bulbs. As a result, someone will end up in the dark. Less than a day later, Vilnius protested about the construction of the gas pipeline, saying that it had not been asked for consent. The European Commission, as a conscientious defender of European interests, also joined the process and initiated an antitrust investigation against Gazprom. The main actions include collecting evidence of manipulation of gas supplies, analyzing pricing and its impact on price increases in Europe. The European Commission is also holding consultations with key EU countries to develop a unified approach to pressure on Gazprom. Formally, the company is accused of manipulating gas supplies, which allegedly led to a sharp increase in prices, and is also threatened with fines of up to 10% of the company's turnover. But many people wonder who believes in these economic reasons, because there is pure politics behind all this. For the Kaliningrad region, the new gas pipeline is not a whim, but a matter of survival. The construction of a connection to Nord Stream 2 will allow the region to reduce its dependence on transit through Lithuania and ensure a secure future. Meanwhile, in Europe itself, nerves are stretched to the limit. EU countries are facing rising energy prices, internal protests, and economic instability. European countries are torn between the desire to strengthen sanctions and the need to preserve their well-being. The European Union is balancing between internal disagreements and external pressure. Those who are ready to act quickly and harshly gain an advantage, because time plays on the side of the resolute. The story of gas has long ceased to be just an economic issue. It is already a symbol of global confrontation. Russia uses its energy resources as an instrument of geopolitical pressure, and the EU is trying to respond to this pressure with retaliatory sanctions and antitrust measures. This conflict reflects a deeper confrontation between the two value systems: the preservation of sovereignty and collective security. Each side is trying to seize the initiative and assert its influence. Russia, for its part, is not ready to give up a millimeter. The gas pipeline is not just a pipe for gas. It is a demonstration of strength, strategy, and survival for Kaliningrad. For the European Union, it is a struggle to maintain control over the energy market and maintain unity among its members. But are they willing to pay such a high price? At the center of this conflict is the struggle for the right to dictate the terms of the game. Russia is against the European Union. Kaliningrad found itself in the very epicenter of this struggle, becoming a hostage of geopolitics. Will he be able to remain a pawn or turn into a major piece? It all depends on how Russia responds to the restrictions imposed by Lithuania. Vilnius, under the guise of complying with European Commission regulations, restricts gas transit to the region, while initiating new antitrust investigations against Gazprom in an attempt to reduce its influence on the European energy market. On the one hand, Russia is ready to use all available tools to protect its interests: economic pressure through gas pricing, the strategic construction of gas pipelines bypassing the EU, as well as diplomatic efforts on international platforms such as the United Nations. The gas pipeline to Kaliningrad is not just a project. It is an instrument of geopolitical struggle, a symbol of the sovereignty and security of the region. On the other side is the European Union, which is literally bursting with contradictions. Some countries demand tougher sanctions against Russia, while others advocate dialogue. Add to this the differences over climate policy, financial burden sharing, and energy dependence, and it becomes clear that the EU is literally on the verge of splitting. Obviously, there is no winner in this game yet. Russia is strengthening its position and showing that it is capable of defending its regions. The European Union, in turn, has to contend not only with external pressure, but also with internal problems. The question is whether any of the players are ready to compromise, or whether this energy war will continue until both sides are completely exhausted. One thing is for sure: Kaliningrad, which was initially perceived as a remote region, has now become the main symbol of the geopolitical struggle, the consequences of which are felt not only in Europe, but also far beyond its borders. Kaliningrad has become an arena where not only the fate of the region, but also the balance of power in Europe is being decided. Russia is trying to prove its ability to defend its territories and overcome any obstacles, while the European Union is trying to demonstrate that it is able to maintain energy independence by increasing pressure on its opponent. The key intrigue in this confrontation remains open. Who will lose more? The question of what will be more important also remains unclear. Events are unfolding rapidly. Russia, faced with the restrictions of Lithuania and the European Commission, includes all available resources. Gazprom is accelerating the construction of a new connection between Kaliningrad and Nord Stream 2. Construction sites are busy around the clock, and for the first time in many years, the project is moving from theoretical discussions to real implementation. However, the European Union does not stand aside. Pressure on Gazprom is increasing through additional investigations, and EU countries are demanding tougher sanctions. As a result, new sanctions are becoming the norm, but their effects are being felt not only by Russia, but also by European consumers themselves. Energy prices continue to rise, which exacerbates the crisis in sectors such as metallurgy and chemical production, which depend on stable energy supplies. Citizens are also feeling it for themselves, especially in countries such as Germany and Poland, where energy tariffs have reached record levels. Against the background of the confrontation with Kaliningrad, which has become something of an outpost, the regional authorities are trying to reduce dependence by developing plans for autonomous electricity supply and the construction of backup storage facilities. However, analysts point out that the conflict has long outgrown the energy plane. Political statements are becoming more strident. Some leaders are calling for tougher sanctions against Russia, including a complete shutdown of energy supplies, while others advocate dialogue and attempts to avoid an energy crisis within the EU. This reinforces the split within the European Union over approaches to cooperation with Russia. Some countries demand dialogue, while others demand a complete cessation of cooperation. The tension affects not only international relations, but also within the European Union itself. The tension reached a peak. Gazprom continues to struggle, facing not only natural and technical difficulties, but also political barriers. Each of these obstacles can jeopardize the entire project. The conflict over Kaliningrad has indeed become not only an energy issue, but also a symbol of a much deeper and more complex geopolitical struggle. This crisis has affected all aspects of international relations, from the economic consequences and sanctions to the domestic policies of the European Union. And although on the surface it seems like a struggle for energy resources, in reality it hides a more important problem: a confrontation for influence, for dominance in the field of energy security, and for the future of the global political map. The European Union finds itself in an extremely difficult situation. On the one hand, there is pressure on EU member states due to rising energy prices and protests from citizens dissatisfied with high tariffs. In particular, in countries such as Germany and Italy, where the economic consequences of the crisis are particularly noticeable, people are demanding lower prices and stabilization of the situation. There is a clear split within the EU itself. Eastern European countries such as Poland and the Baltic states are urgently demanding increased sanctions against Russia, while Southern European countries such as France and Italy are looking for ways to resolve the conflict diplomatically, fearing further economic losses. This split between the EU countries makes it much more difficult to adopt a unified position on the issue of pressure on Russia. On the one hand, the continued strengthening of sanctions may lead to an even greater economic crisis within the EU. On the other hand, Russia's concessions may be perceived as weakness and undermining the unity of the European Union. Countries that advocate a diplomatic settlement understand that compromise is the only way to a long-term solution, while hardliners believe that pressure should continue until Russia changes its position. And in this context, Kaliningrad has become not just a pawn in a geopolitical game, but a symbol of how local energy problems can cause global consequences. The situation around Kaliningrad has also affected the interests of Russia itself. Gazprom, despite sanctions and pressure from the European Union, continues to actively build new gas pipelines that will help reduce the region's dependence on transit through Lithuania. The project to build a gas pipeline bypassing Lithuania is not only an economic step, but also a demonstration of Russia's strength, ready to defend its national interests. This is a project not only to ensure Kaliningrad's energy security, but also as a strategic threat to the European Union, especially for countries involved in sanctions pressure. In this context, Kaliningrad has become a symbol not only of energy independence, but also of a political struggle in which each side is trying to seize the initiative. Nevertheless, the conflict, which was initially related to gas supplies and energy resources, eventually developed into a more complex and multi-layered problem affecting not only the economy, but also issues of geopolitical influence. In this game, it is important not only to provide access to energy resources, but also to prove your ability to dictate the terms of the game in the international arena. One of the most important aspects that is becoming more and more obvious is how sanctions and economic pressure affect internal political stability in both Russia and the European Union. There is growing discontent among citizens within the EU about rising energy prices and deteriorating economic conditions. In countries such as Germany and Poland, there are protests caused by high energy tariffs. At this time, EU governments are faced with the need to balance between maintaining sanctions and the need to maintain internal stability. On the other hand, Russia does not intend to concede in any aspect of this struggle. Gazprom and other Russian companies continue to develop infrastructure, build alternative gas supply routes, and even develop projects to enhance Kaliningrad's energy autonomy, including new power plants and an expanded network of renewable energy sources. Russia's strategy is not only to ensure Kaliningrad's energy security, but also to demonstrate its ability to protect its interests in the face of external pressure. This is an attempt not only to protect the country from sanctions, but also to assert its dominance in the European energy market. And now I would like to express my opinion, friends. This material demonstrates one of the key problems of modern geopolitics: the inability of the parties to recognize that their principles and ambitions stand on shaky foundations. Russia is increasing pressure behind the national security rhetoric, but let's be honest. This gas shield is nothing more than a way to prove its importance in conditions of weakened influence. The European Union, in turn, is treading water, torn apart by internal contradictions and fear of choosing between economic collapse and saving its face. If the parties continue to tug of war, the only thing they will achieve is a complete depletion of resources. In my humble opinion, Russia certainly has more resources. But what is most annoying is the hypocrisy of Europe. The European Union, criticizing Moscow's aggressive policy, is falling apart itself, unable to develop any effective strategy. Instead of real solutions, we see only a demonstration of force and a policy of ultimatums that will lead to nothing. How do you think this conflict can end? What approach, in your opinion, could lead to a long-term solution that would suit both sides? Write your opinion, friends, and I want to thank you for your attention. I wish you good health and success. See you later.